truly in charge. The efforts of the radical Republicans to remove Andrew Johnson from the presidency. With the passage of the 14th Amendment, the radical Republicans had proven themselves to be the more powerful force in rebuilding the country. Their problem was that Andrew Johnson was president and was proving himself to be a roadblock to their plans for Reconstruction, and they decided that it was time for him to go. President Johnson, who had taken over after Lincoln's assassination, was never supposed to have been in that position. Johnson, who had been a senator from Tennessee before the Civil War, had been the only member of the U.S. Congress to stay in Washington, D.C. when the states of the South seceded. When the election of 1864 came around and the Republicans wanted to be seen as a national party instead of a sectional one that they had been in 1860, Johnson became the ideal candidate for vice president. After all, only one president had died while in office, William Henry Harrison in 1841, and he had died after going out and delivering his inaugural address on a cold and blustery March day without wearing a coat or a hat. He caught pneumonia and died a month later. The radicals believed Johnson was dragging his feet in forcing the South to go along with their plans for Reconstruction. When he began openly encouraging Southern states not to ratify the 14th Amendment, the leaders of the radical Republicans, Thaddeus Stevens of Pennsylvania and Charles Sumner of Massachusetts, set about to impeach Johnson and, hopefully, remove him from office. When a politician is impeached, and it has only happened to presidents twice in the history of the country, it means that there is enough evidence that the politician has broken the law for a trial to occur on whether or not he should be able to hold his seat. In President Johnson's case, the radical Republicans set a trap for him, which he walked into willingly. The radicals passed the Tenure of Office Act, which stated that because the Constitution states that all presidential appointments must be approved by the Senate, then all presidential firings should be approved by the Senate as well. Johnson vetoed this, and the radicals overrode his veto. Johnson then fired Secretary of War Edwin Stanton without the consent of the Senate, which violated the law and Johnson's constitutional duty to carry out the laws of the country. The impeachment proceedings began in the House of Representatives, which acted as a sort of grand jury. They looked at the evidence that was presented to them and decided whether or not there was enough evidence to prove a crime had been committed. Their job was not to decide guilt or innocence, simply whether or not a crime had been committed. The case moved to the Senate, which acted as the trial court. Evidence was presented on both sides, and, after listening to it, members of the Senate voted on whether or not to punish Andrew Johnson. The radical Republicans were one vote short of gaining the necessary two-thirds majority to find someone guilty of the high crimes and misdemeanors that Johnson had been accused of. Johnson was able to remain in office, but any power that he had was severely limited, giving the radicals even more power than before. In 1868, the Republican Party nominated Ulysses S. Grant, the Union general who had accepted the surrender of Confederate Robert E. Lee, for the presidency, a position which he won with almost 53% of the popular vote and almost three-quarters of the electoral vote. This support in the White House gave the radicals the power to push the 15th Amendment through Congress and onto the states for approval. This amendment guaranteed the right to vote regardless of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. This was a major step for the radicals, as only 8 northern states gave African Americans the right to vote in 1868. Democrats were angry about this, believing that, quote, the most revolutionary measure, end quote, ever passed by Congress. African Americans, not surprisingly, voted overwhelmingly for Republicans in the election of 1870, and many managed to win seats in their local state legislatures. However, that momentum did not carry over to the national level, as only 8 African Americans were elected to the House of Representatives during the Reconstruction era. Only one African American became a governor of a state, PBS Pinchback of Louisiana. He would be the last African American governor of any state in the United States until L. Douglas Wilder became governor of Virginia in 1990.